Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving back into some entitled people stories. Ever been treated like you have no right to your own things? In these 3 stories, someone tried to do just that, and each time the person who stood their ground proved that respect isn't negotiable. My sister said I had no right to kick out her boyfriend since the house wasn't technically mine. My husband Kyle and I own a small vacation house on Lake Michigan. Technically, we both own it now, but it originally belonged to him long before we got married, which matters more than it should in this story. It's not fancy, but it's clean, quiet, and right near the water. It's the kind of place you go to decompress, reset your brain, and remember what silence sounds like. From the beginning of our relationship, my younger sister Leah has been welcome to use it whenever we weren't there, and until recently, that arrangement worked perfectly. Leah's always been respectful with the house. She cleans thoroughly, restocks basics, and usually leaves it in better shape than we do. She treats it like a privilege, not an entitlement, and Kyle and I genuinely didn't mind her being there. That changed about a year ago when she started dating her boyfriend, Al. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt at first, but that grace wore thin quickly. Al is bluntly a slob. He leaves trash wherever it lands and seems to operate under the assumption that Leah exists to clean up behind him. He has 2 young kids from a previous relationship, and when they're around, he does nothing while expecting Leah to handle meals, messes, and discipline, even though she's not their parent. I've watched him tell her to grab him a beer while she's actively cleaning, while he sits on the couch watching TV. If that's how he behaves in front of us, I don't want to imagine how he acts when no one's watching. Despite all of that, Leah is clearly in love with him. When she talks about Al, her whole demeanor changes. Her eyes light up, her voice softens, and she defends him reflexively, even when the criticism is deserved. She works 60 hours a week and still tries to keep their house running, which mostly means she's exhausted and overwhelmed all the time. Still, when she asked if she and Al could use the lake house for a few days, I said yes. I told myself it would be fine, and Kyle and I were already planning to arrive 3 days later anyway. When Kyle and I pulled into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It hit us the moment we opened the door. A thick, sour stench of old food and stale beer. The kitchen was a disaster, with dirty dishes stacked high in the sink and food scraps left out on the counter. The floor was sticky underfoot, and when I looked closer, I saw crayon drawings scrawled directly onto the walls. It didn't look lived in, it looked abandoned. We walked into the living room and found Leah frantically picking up toys while Al sat back in a rocking chair drinking a beer like he was on vacation from responsibility. Something in me snapped. I walked over, took the beer straight out of his hand, and asked him why he wasn't helping clean the mess he clearly helped create. He smirked and asked why I was assuming it was his mess and not Leah's. I told him it was because I wasn't stupid. Al laughed and shrugged, saying Leah was already cleaning and there was no need for 2 people to do the same job. That casual dismissal pushed me over the edge. I told him he and his kids had 1 hour to pack their things and leave, or I would call the police. He looked at Kyle like he expected backup, and Kyle didn't even hesitate. He just said, "Why are you looking at me? Go pack." Leah immediately started crying and accused me of ruining their vacation before it even started. She said I walked in and made a scene instead of talking things out like an adult. Then she said something that really stuck with me, which was that I didn't even own the house and had no right to throw anyone out. I told her there was nothing to talk through because Al was the problem, full stop. As for the house, Kyle owned it, and he was standing right there agreeing with me. When Leah threw the house's original ownership in your face, it was a low blow meant to hurt you and undermine your authority in your own home. In that moment, she chose his side completely, using the one piece of history she knew could sting to protect someone who was treating her and your property with zero respect. That's when she said if Al was leaving, she was leaving too. I didn't stop her. Watching her walk out hurt, but watching her stay and continue cleaning up after someone who didn't respect her would have hurt more. That night, my phone blew up with calls and texts. My mom called first, demanding to know why I kicked Leah out of the vacation house. I told her the truth, which was that I kicked Al out and Leah chose to follow him. My mom wasn't interested in that distinction. She said I needed to be more accepting, that not everyone lives the same way I do, and that Al was part of the family now, whether I liked it or not. She told me I should have stayed out of it and let Leah handle her own relationship. Leah hasn't spoken to me since, and my mom is still angry. What gets me is that no one seems upset about the condition of the house. No one cares that Leah was once again left to clean while Al relaxed. They're upset that I made it impossible for him to keep doing that on my dime in my space. If being the bad guy means I stopped someone from treating my sister like a live-in maid while trashing our home, I can live with that. The lake house is clean again, quiet again, and for the first time in a while, I don't regret standing my ground. The quiet and clean you have now is your answer. The peace in the house proves your point more than any argument could. Sometimes protecting a space, and by extension, the principle of respect, means accepting that others will call you the villain. But the clean floors and silent rooms aren't villains. They're just proof that a boundary was necessary and that holding it brought the peace you needed. And our second story. Heard a Karen claim a charity shop's policy was illegal? My involuntary laugh turned me into her secondary enemy. My girlfriend and I were killing time one afternoon and decided to duck into a local charity shop we pass all the time. They had a handwritten sign taped to the window advertising a sale where literally everything in the store was £2. Clothes, books, random knickknacks, the whole lot. It was one of those places that smells faintly of fabric softener and dust, staffed by older volunteers who look like they'd rather be anywhere else but still show up because they care. We weren't looking for anything specific, just browsing and enjoying the low-stakes thrill of bargain hunting. We hadn't been inside more than a few minutes when we heard raised voices coming from the counter. Not the usual mild disagreement or confused question, but the sharp, angry tone that immediately makes everyone in a small shop freeze and start pretending to browse while listening very carefully. A woman who I'll forever refer to as EC was leaning aggressively over the counter, gesturing wildly with a crumpled receipt in her hand. She was loudly informing the employee that she hadn't been told she couldn't get a refund when she bought a top the day before. According to her, this was a massive injustice, and if the shop didn't immediately give her money back, she would be calling the police. Over a £2 top in a charity shop. The employee, who looked like she was maybe in her early 20s and already completely drained by life, stayed remarkably calm. She explained that she personally remembered serving EC the day before and had told her very clearly that if the top didn't fit, she could exchange it for something else. No refunds. She even pointed behind her to a sign taped to the wall. The sign was old, sun-faded, and curling at the edges, clearly not something that had been slapped up overnight to scam unsuspecting customers. EC immediately snapped that the sign wasn't there yesterday and accused the employee of lying. She then raised her voice further and announced to the entire shop that it was illegal for any store not to inform customers of their refund policy at the time of purchase. She said this with the confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea what she was talking about, but believed volume equaled authority. That's when I made my fatal mistake. I laughed. Not a polite chuckle or a discreet snort, but an honest, involuntary laugh that slipped out before my brain could stop it. My girlfriend immediately jabbed me in the arm and shot me a look that said very clearly, "Do not get involved." In my defense, I just spent nearly 3 decades buying things without anyone formally sitting me down to explain refund policies, so the absurdity of the claim hit me all at once. EC's head snapped toward me like a heat-seeking missile. Her face twisted into pure outrage, and she locked eyes with me as if I had personally wronged her. She demanded to know what I thought was so funny. The entire shop went silent, and suddenly I was part of this mess, whether I wanted to be or not. Before my girlfriend could stop me, I said, "You're literally arguing over £2 you're trying to take from a charity shop." That did not help. EC exploded. She started ranting about how it wasn't about the money, it was about principle, and how businesses couldn't just make up rules as they went along. She accused the employee of trying to scam her and accused me of being disrespectful and ignorant. She kept waving the top around like evidence in a murder trial, even though the thing looked like it had already lived 3 full lives before ending up on that rack. The employee tried again to de-escalate, repeating that EC was welcome to exchange the top for literally anything else in the shop. There were racks of clothes, shelves of books, £2 trinkets everywhere. EC refused. She wanted her refund, demanded it, and insisted she would not leave without it. She even pulled her phone out and made a big show of threatening to call the police, as if officers would sprint over lights flashing to handle a charity shop refund dispute. The moment you called her out on the money, she immediately switched to it being about the principle. That's the tell. When someone's real motive, petty greed, is exposed, they always retreat to the high ground of principle to make themselves seem righteous instead of ridiculous. It's a shield against the embarrassment of being caught making a scene over nothing. At this point, my girlfriend grabbed my arm and whispered that we were leaving before things got worse. As we headed toward the door, EC was still yelling about consumer rights and illegal practices, while the employee stood there gripping the counter and looking like she was one sentence away from quitting volunteer work forever. We stepped outside and the door closed behind us, muffling EC's ranting, but not quite cutting it off completely. My girlfriend immediately scolded me for opening my mouth, even though she admitted the whole situation was ridiculous. I agreed, but honestly, the sheer audacity of it all stuck with me. This wasn't some massive corporation squeezing pennies out of people. It was a charity shop running on donations and volunteers, selling everything for the price of a cup of coffee. We didn't stay to see how it ended, and part of me still curious whether EC actually called the police or eventually stormed out in a huff. But the image of a grown adult throwing a full-scale tantrum over 2 pounds in a shop meant to help others is burned into my brain. Some people talk about supporting charities, and some people try to squeeze them for every coin they can get back. I think we all know which category EC falls into. The true tragedy wasn't the 2 pounds. It was that EC chose a charity shop, a place running on goodwill and thin margins, as the stage for her performance. Her tantrum wasn't just embarrassing, it was morally backward, an act of taking from those who have nothing so she could feel like she won. And our last story. He thought grandfathered rights let him pump our lake dry. For generations, my family has owned nearly 1,000 acres of Oklahoma prairie and timber. It's the kind of land people romanticize but rarely actually keep anymore. Rolling grass, old-growth trees, and a spring-fed lake that takes up roughly 200 acres right in the middle of it all. That lake's the crown jewel. It's fully contained within our property lines, shows up clearly on every survey and deed, and we pay taxes on every inch of it. We stock it, maintain it, and treat it like what it is: private water on private land. It's not just scenery, it's heritage. That quiet, predictable rhythm lasted right up until old man Harlan decided the lake was his. Harlan's farm borders our western fence line. He's been there forever and acts like it gives him squatter-level authority over anything within eyesight. For years, he was a manageable annoyance. His cattle leaned against the shared fence until posts bent. He complained when we did controlled burns, even though we followed state guidelines and gave notice. He had opinions about everything, but nothing worth escalating. That changed when the drought cycle hit. We noticed the lake level dropping faster than it should have. This wasn't evaporation. We've lived with droughts before, and the math wasn't mathing. One afternoon, walking the shoreline, we found the answer: a massive industrial irrigation line snaked under our boundary fence and disappeared straight into the lake. Not a garden hose, not a little pump. This thing looked like it could drain a swimming pool in minutes. Later, Harlan proudly told someone he could pull 5,000 gallons per minute if he wanted. He said it like a brag. To service the pump, he'd been trespassing across nearly a quarter mile of our land every few days. Tire tracks, boot prints, the works. I started polite because that's how things are supposed to work. I walked over to his place, introduced myself again, and told him plainly, "Mr. Riggs, you need to remove your pump and the irrigation line. That lake is private property, and so is the land you're crossing to get to it." He spit tobacco juice into the dirt and didn't even look embarrassed. "That water's just sitting there," he said. "I'm putting it to use. That's a neighborly thing." Then he waved a hand and muttered something about an old handshake agreement, some grandfathered right that supposedly predated both of us. It was nonsense. Our title was clean, no easements, no shared water rights, nothing. That was the end of the polite phase. I put up heavy-duty no trespassing private property signs every 50 yards along the fence. I sent a certified letter demanding he remove the equipment and cease trespassing within 72 hours. I even filmed a painfully direct conversation at his front door where I said slowly and clearly, "You are not permitted on our land. Accessing our lake is theft. This is your final warning." He smirked, shut the door, and apparently set his alarm clock earlier. When he called stealing your water a neighborly thing, the conversation was over. His smirk when you gave the final warning showed he wasn't confused, he just didn't respect you or your rights. That's when you stopped talking and started building a legal case. The signs and certified letter were the first pieces of evidence. He didn't remove the pump, he just started coming at dawn. That's when I called the sheriff's office. The deputy who came out was calm but non-committal. "At first glance, this looks like a civil matter," he said. I handed him the certified letter receipt, the video photos of the pump with our lake clearly visible in the background, and copies of the survey. He sighed, nodded, and said they'd go talk to Harlan. He got a warning. The pump stayed. At that point, I realized this was going to be a war of attrition. I bought a dozen high-resolution game cameras, camouflaged them, and set up a perimeter around the lake and the access points Harlan used. The first week, I pulled a memory card and hit play. There he was, clear as day. John Deere cap, same jacket, checking the pump like he owned the place. That footage became the new normal. I called the sheriff again, this time with documented prior warnings and clear video evidence. They cited him for trespassing. The fine wasn't much, but it was a start. From then on, every single visit got reported. The game camera footage became routine paperwork. Harlan Riggs, trespassing, case number blank, over and over. The fine stacked up, his attitude got worse, he started yelling at the cameras, flipping them off, cursing loud enough that the microphones picked it up. Then he cut a section of our fence, claiming it was falling down. I had it repaired within 24 hours and installed another camera pointed directly at the repair. When he came back and messed with it again, he earned himself a citation for destruction of property. The game cameras turned a he said, she said argument into an open and shut case. Every visit was a documented crime. But making reporting him a routine administrative task? You turned his defiance against him. The real turning point came when I finally hired a lawyer who specialized in land and water rights. After reviewing everything, she didn't hesitate. She told me to file a formal complaint with the Oklahoma Water Resources Board for unauthorized diversion. The state takes water theft very seriously, especially during a drought. That got Harlan's attention. The board scheduled a hearing. Suddenly, the neighborly misunderstanding had a docket number. Between the misdemeanor fines, the pending state enforcement action, and the civil lawsuit we filed for damages, the pressure started to show. What he'd brushed off as a petty dispute was now a regulatory nightmare with teeth. The final scene wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no grandstanding. It was a county courtroom hearing for a permanent restraining order. Harlan stood there looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His lawyer tried to frame it as confusion, old habits, neighborly expectations. Our attorney laid out the timeline, the warnings, the signage, the certified letters, 17 separate trespassing incidents on camera, the citations, the unauthorized diversion complaint. She put an actual dollar value on the water he'd taken. The judge didn't need long. He granted the permanent restraining order, upheld every fine, and strongly suggested Harlan settle the civil case unless he wanted it to get much worse. He settled the following week. The pump and pipe are gone, the fence is repaired and taller now, with new signs that mention video surveillance in big, unfriendly letters. We still monitor the shoreline, but the trespassing is stopped. The lake level is slowly recovering. Harlan doesn't wave anymore. That's fine. I'd rather have my water back than his approval. Each story is a clash over ownership of a home, of money, of natural resources. In each, the person overstepping relied on bluffing, bullying, or emotional manipulation to get their way, and each time the response was the same: clear boundaries, collected evidence, and unwavering resolve. Whether it's family, a stranger, or a neighbor, the rule remains. You don't have to earn your own property. You just have to be willing to protect it. Thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.